If you've been following the legislature, you'll know that we are nearing the first adjournment of the legislature. In fact, this is the final week before we go into our spring break, which lasts about 3 weeks. A lot happened this week. Of course, the focus, as you know, if you've been following the legislature, has been the issue of the school finance lawsuit. And so finally, we've seen some movement here in both the House and the Senate. Earlier, the House passed House Bill 2445. This is a funding package in the amount of about $520 million. It's a multi-year package. Likewise, the Senate passed Senate Bill 423, and theirs passed by a margin of 21 to 18. I might mention that House vote, I think, was 71 to 53. So, pretty substantial margin in the House, a little bit closer in the Senate. I had felt that we should have put something together, back in, say, middle of February or, late February, and at least gotten it over to the Supreme Court for their review. But as it stands, we did pass bills out of both the House and the Senate. Now, there's quite a difference. The House bill's $520 million over a multi-year period, and as I mentioned, the Senate passed a bill, but theirs is for $275 million, so roughly half. So we're going to see quite a bit of difference in there. What will happen now is that we'll go into a procedural thing called a conference committee made up of 3 Senate members and 3 House members, and they will try to come to some common ground. Unfortunately, that $520 million, a lot of people voted against it because they didn't think it was enough. Obviously, people voted against it because they thought it was too much. So we have a lot of different views of this, and so they're going to have to hammer that out in that conference committee, as I mentioned. The thing that I worry about, though, is that it would go down from there. If we can stick with that amount, I think it's a good start. And obviously, a lot of people look at everything with finality around here. I believe that down the road, if additional funding has to be, the legislature can provide that funding. But for now, I believe we need to move and get something passed out of here and signed by the governor. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to go on a 3-week break. During that particular time, all the bills that have been signed into law by the governor, become law after they're published, or actually after they go into the statute books. In the meantime, though, there's a lot of legislation that's going to pass because we have conference committees meeting right now. And so during that break, the governor and staff will look over all these bills and verify the fiscal notes. Likewise, staff, the revisor's office, and so forth, will review the bills to make sure the wording is correct and that there's no mistakes in that particular area. Now, when we do come back at the end of April, that particular portion of the legislative session is referred to as a veto session, during which time, if there have been any bills that have been vetoed by the governor, the legislature will have a chance to override those vetoes if they feel that there is a need to do that. The governor can veto a number of line items in a bill, which has been done in the past. Now, we had several challenges coming into this session. Obviously, the school finance was the big focus, as I mentioned, and then we also have to put together a budget. And this year, once again, we will probably have a balanced budget and send that to the governor, and hopefully we can get that done in short order. Now, both the House Appropriations Committee as well as the Senate Ways and Committee have been working all session long, putting together those budgets, looking at the governor's recommendations, and then each committee will come up with their recommendations. And obviously, just like this school finance bill, that will go to a conference committee between the House and the Senate, and they will try to sort out those differences. Also looming out there is this constitutional amendment business, and that is basically a constitutional amendment that passed out of a House committee here 12 to 10, I believe, a couple days ago. The Senate has been really adamant about that, or at least Senate leadership. And this, to me, is going down a very dangerous path because this would pretty much eliminate the Supreme Court from having any say-so or any involvement in any school finance issues in the future. Now, bear in mind, in my opinion, the Supreme Court is not the bad guy here. They're an appellate court. This came to them, and they have to do their job. I think the problem over the last few years with school finance is the legislature hasn't been doing its job. So once we kind of get beyond this, but that constitutional amendment is still out there. It takes a 2/3 vote in both the House and the Senate. Many feel there is not 84 votes in the House or 27 in the Senate. That remains to be seen. That did pass out of a House committee. And so there are other issues out there. This business of taxing internet sales, I think, still has some traction, so we may see something on that. But in the meantime, I've got a really busy schedule lined up for the 3-week break, visiting with constituents and various groups. I look forward to that. Also look forward to getting back here and wrapping up the session.